بمنزلة هارون من موسى. اللهم والي من والاه وعادي من عاداه وانصر من نصره واخذل من خذله والعن من نصب له من الأولين والآخرين وصل عليه أفضل ما صليت على أحد من أوصياء أنبيائك يا رب العالمين.
علي علي مولا علي علي مولا علي علي مولا علي 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 مولا علي علي مولا علي علي مولا علي 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 مولا علي علي مولا علي علي مولا علي. حب علي فوز الشيعي غدا فامدد لي في يوم حسابي يدا وانقذني من نار جحيم وهل رمت شفيعا غير إمام الهدى. إن صلاتي ثم صيامي إذا لم يشفع لي حيدر ضاعت سدى. يشهد ربي أن بروحي له حبا دوما قلبي فيه شدا. صهر الهادي أنت مرادي علي صهر الهادي أنت مرادي علي 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 مولا علي علي مولا علي علي مولا علي 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 مولا علي علي مولا علي علي مولا علي 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 مولا علي علي مولا علي علي مولا علي 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 مولا علي علي مولا علي علي مولا علي 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 مولا علي علي مولا علي علي مولا علي. حار بشخصك يا حيدرة البشائر هتفت بمديحك مولاي السوار. نورك من أنوار الله انتشر ملأ الدنيا غطى نور القمر. نفسك نفس الهادي طه الأغيار وبك اكتمل الدين وعم الظفر. ذكرك خالد حبك شاهد علي ذكرك خالد حبك شاهد علي.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الأول بلا أول كان قبله والآخر بلا آخر يكون بعده الذي قصرت عن رؤيته أبصار الناظرين وعجزت عن نعته أوهام الواصفين. ابتدع بقدرته الخلق ابتداعا واخترعهم على مشيته اختراعا ثم سلك بهم طريق إرادته وبعثهم في سبيل محبته. لا يملكون تأخيرا عما قدمهم إليه ولا يستطيعون تقدما إلى ما أخرهم عنه. تقدست أسماؤه وتظاهرت آلاؤه لا يسأل عما يفعل وهم يسألون. ثم شرائف صلواته ونوامي بركاته على عبده ورسوله الخاتم لما سبق والفاتح لمن غلق، والمعلن الحق بالحق، الدافع جيشات الأباطيل، والدامغ صولات الأطاليل، العبد المؤيد والمنصور المسدد، المصطفى الأمجد المحمود الأحمد، سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد، الذي بلغ الرسالة صادعا بها، وحمل على المحجة دالا عليها، وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين، الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا، ولا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين وحجته في العالمين، روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه فداء، واللعن الدائم على أعدائهم وغاصبي حقوقهم وجاحدي مناقبهم ومنكري فضائلهم من الآن إلى أبد الآبدين. فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح ابن مريم، وما أمروا إلا ليعبدوا إلها واحدا لا إله إلا هو سبحانه عما يشركون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا، حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم الشريف. My very respected viewers, may Allah bless you, may Allah keep you well. I extend to you my greetings of brotherly love and respect. Assalamu alaikum. May Allah help us and give us the capacity and the ability to follow Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, and to love them and to saturate our hearts with faith in them and with iman in them and with their love and devotion to them. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum al-sharif. Today I initiate a very important discussion, a very monumentally critical discussion, and that is this discussion of Velayat-e-Faqih. So you could, this word Velayat-e-Faqih, you could mention it and you could pronounce it in different ways. You could use the Persianized pronunciation Velayat-e-Faqih, or you could use the Arabic pronunciation Velayat-e-Faqih. You have the choice. I chose the Persian title because mostly in the West, this concept is known through the Iranian Revolution and with the Persianized articulation of the word. So this is a very important discussion because Velayat-e-Faqih, especially for us Shi'as, it impacts our religious life, it impacts our social lives, and believe it or not, even if you're living in the West, it impacts your individual, your spiritual, your familial life in many ways, because it has very far-reaching effects, especially on the Shias, very direct effect. Therefore, we have to understand and we have to know, what does this concept mean? What does this notion imply? And then whether it is justified on the basis of the instructions and statements of Quran and instructions and statements of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Not only it impacts Shia, the concept of Velayat-e-Faqih, because Iran is a very important country in the world, and because the issues in the Middle East, one way or other, its effects and its uh, and its and and its influences reaches all human beings in the world. Therefore, in a way, you can say that there's not a single person in the world who is either directly or indirectly impacted by the idea of Velayat-e-Faqih. What does Velayat-e-Faqih mean? What does Velayat-e-Faqih mean? Velayat-e-Faqih or Velayat-e-Faqih comprises of two words, Wilaya, Vilayat, or Faqih, or Al-Faqih. The term Wilaya or Vilayat means guardianship, rulership, custodianship, patronage. And I'm just translating the words now. And then inshallah, I'll describe what does the ideology mean, what does the concept denote. And Al-Faqih, literally, Faqih means knowledgeable person who is knowledgeable, person who has in-depth knowledge of something. And in Quran and Hadith, when Faqih is used, it means a person who has an in-depth and profound understanding of Quran and Hadith, of religion. It doesn't have to be a specific field of religion. Generally, a person who has in-depth and profound understanding of Quran and Hadith. But when we are talking about Wilayat-e-Faqih or Wilayat-al-Faqih, we are not talking about just any knowledgeable person. We are talking about the jurist, mujtahid, mufti, person whose specialization is the discipline of fiqh, jurisprudence. So a Shia jurist, a Shia jurisprudent, a Shia jurisprudence expert, he is meant by the term faqih. So Vilayat-e-Faqih means the custodianship, the guardianship, the rulership, the patronage of the Shia jurist. And by jurist, we mean that person is specific, that person who has studied the science of fiqh, the discipline of fiqh, and has mastered the jurisprudence of fiqh, and then is able to issue fatwa, is able to issue verdicts. So that is literally the meaning of the term wilayat. Now, what does wilayat-e-faqih mean as a concept? As you would have guessed, and it's Wilayat-e-Faqih has different meanings. Not always it has the same meaning. So there are different phrases that are added to this term in order to describe what they mean by this. So there is a limited version of Wilayat-al-Faqih, and there is an unlimited Wilayat-al-Faqih. In other words, there is limited guardianship of the jurist, and there is unlimited, boundless guardianship of the jurist. And obviously, as you have heard, perhaps the majority of Shia jurists throughout history, they have believed in the limited version, of the guardianship of the jurist. And a minority have recently started propagating that the limited version is not correct. Rather, the jurist's right and the jurist's position gives him unlimited authority. So that is the al-wilaya al-mutlaqa. Al-mutlaqa, al-wilaya al-muqayyada. Wilayat-al-faqih al-mutlaqa, wilayat-al-faqih ghayr al-mutlaqa. So from now on, we are going to be using this term, wilayat-al-faqih al-mutlaqa. Unlimited guardianship of the faqih. And as opposed to limited guardianship of the jurist. So what is the limited version, which the majority of Shia jurists have been its proponent? So it has a very specific meaning. It means that in those issues that are wajib kifai, those issues that are the duties of all Shia Muslims, all Shia community. And those issues, it is the jurist, the best person, who is the best candidate for those tasks to carry out. What does that mean? It means that, for instance, if you have a mosque, and this mosque does not have any custodian. So the person who built mosque, we do not know who he is. It was such a long time ago, this mosque and this neighborhood was built, and we don't know who built this mosque. Nobody's taking care of this mosque anymore. So this mosque is coming into ruins. So it is the communal, it is the collective duty of the Shia to protect that mosque. Do not allow that mosque to go into ruins. Do not allow that mosque to be lost, be destroyed, and just protect it. So which is the best person to do that job? in whose control, in whose authority that mosque should be, in the mujtahid. If you have a jurist, give it to him. He's the best candidate for that job. Or if there's a person who is retarded and he doesn't have any custodian, he does not have anybody who is responsible for his affairs. So his father's passed away, his mother's passed away. Nobody's taking care of this person, retarded person. He's mental, he's retarded. So such a person, because he cannot make his own decisions, Shias collectively, as a community, they are responsible not to allow this person, not to permit this person to be, his rights to be violated, his properties to be taken away, or him treated in an unfair manner. So who, because he himself cannot do that, who is going to take care of that? The best person to do that is the mujtahid, is the Jews. Or if you have an orphan, for instance, if an orphan, he is a child, he doesn't have any person in the world to take care of him. So who is going to be his guardian? Well, all Muslims are responsible not to allow that orphan to be mistreated or his property taken away. If he has any inheritance, taken away from him. So mujtahid, the jurist, is the best person for this situation to be the custodian. So this is the limited al-umur al-hasbiyya. So the mujtahid's authority, the mujtahid's rulership, the mujtahid's guardianship, this authority is limited to a very, very defined in a very minute area. Those areas that are the collective duties of all Shi'as to safeguard those matters, and those duties should fall on the shoulders of a mujtahid because he knows halal and haram supposedly better than the others. Therefore, he is the best qualified. Therefore, he has the authority on these issues. So, and this does not include the government. This does not, the limited version, the limited view of wilaya, limited guardianship of faqih. If we believe in this theory, then it does not follow that mujtahid has the right to form a government and to lead the government and rule over Muslims in his capacity as the heir of the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, as the deputy of the Imam alayhi salam. That is not part of this theory. That the limited version of this theory totally negates. He says mujtahid does not have those authorities. Mujtahid has a very limited authority in these well-defined issues that I just gave example of. So this is one version. The other version, unlimited, the boundless authority of the mujtahid. Mutlaqa. Mutlaqa means boundless, unlimited. That means that mujtahid has the same authority as the Nabi and the Imam alayhi salam. The Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, an-Nabiyyu awla bil mu'minina min anfusihim. The Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam has greater authority over the lives of Muslims that they do themselves. This is the verse of the Holy Quran, as I recall, in Surah Al-Ahzab, chapter number 33, and perhaps verse number 6, if I'm not mistaken. So the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has greater authority, greater control over individual Muslims' lives and their communities' affairs than they do themselves. So because he's infallible, because he has divine wisdom, because he is conveying the message of the Creator, and because he knows what the Creator, what God Almighty wants us to do, and he is never going to abuse any person's right. If he orders you as a person that you have to sell your house, you have to sell it, although you do not want to sell it. If he commands you that you cannot live in this city, and you should go and live in another city, you should carry out the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's wishes, because he has greater authority over you. If he wants you to divorce your wife and you love your wife, and he says that your wife should marry somebody else for whatever reason, he has that authority, and nobody else, and you cannot resist his command. And of course, the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he is the best person qualified, and he's the only person qualified when he's alive. He's the sole authority to be the leader of the government. It is for him to form government. It's for him to control the treasury. It's for him to direct the armies, which wars have to be waged in which direction, which parties have to be signed treaties with, and which side parties are going to be our adversaries, and we are going to fight them. So that is the privilege of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is his authority. And likewise, after him, the Holy Imam alayhi salam. Each Imam has the same authority as the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he has the power to, if he wants to turn your home into a mosque, all he has to do is say so. And then you have to carry out his wishes. If he wants you to go to a frontier and be a guardsman there, be a watchman in a certain frontier, then you have to pack up and go. And if he wants you to spend your property in the way of Islam, then that's what you have to do. And of course, they are infallible. They do not abuse anybody, and they're compassionate, and they are never going to impose upon you anything that infringes your rights, or that's going to be very difficult for you to carry out, except if it's a time of war, time of sacrifice. That is something else. Okay. And obviously, if you're a Shia, you know that the best person to qualify, or rather the only person appointed by Allah to lead the government, to be the head of the state, is the Imam alayhi salam. He is the one who is going to establish government. He is going to establish its branches. He is going to appoint the governors. He is going to assign different people for different jobs at the government in every way. So that is his authority. So now you understood what is the authority of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What's the authority of the Holy Imam alayhi salam? Very vast, unlimited authority. Now, Wilayatul-Mutlaqa lil-Faqih, the unlimited guardianship, the unlimited authority of Faqih dictates that the same authority that the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam has, same authority is extended to the jurist, to the Shia jurist. He has the same authority. And the same authority, the same sort of control, rightful control that the Imam alayhi salam enjoys, that is extended also to the jurist. So as the deputy of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and as the deputy of the Holy Imam alayhi salam, he has the same authority. And it's not only the government or no government, because it's not always possible for the mujtahid to be the leader of a government. Even if he's not the leader of it, if Muslims are in such a situation, or Shias are in such a situation whereby they do not have the power, they do not have the resources, they do not have the popular support to form a government, and the government is controlled by some oppressors, some despots. Even in such situation, he has that authority, same authority as the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam had. Imagine the time that the holy Imams alayhim salatu wasalam were not leading governments. They were not heads of state, yet they had the same authority as if they were the heads of a state. So if they wanted to sell your house, if they wanted to ask you to move to another town, if they wanted you to divorce your wife, if they wanted you to spend your money in a specific cause, if they wanted you to do anything, they had that authority. They had greater authority over over your lives than you had yourself. So, government or no government, they had that authority. So the mujtahid, the mufti, the jurist has the same authority as the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and as the Imam alayhi salam. And one aspect of that authority, one facet of that leadership is government, the state. So, in his capacity as the deputy, as the heir of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and as the heir and successor and the deputy of the Holy Imam alayhi salam, the jurist has the soul, and he has the right to be the head of the state, be the head of the government. And it's him who is going to appoint what person should do what. He is going to appoint who is going to control the treasury, who's going to be the head of the armed forces. And if it's a modern state like today's state, so there are many things. There's the president, there could be a prime minister, there could be a cabinet, there could be a parliament, there could be different ministries, ministry of education, ministry of foreign affairs, ministry of the treasury, all the police force, the armed forces, all of them are legitimate only, legal only, if they are under the control and under the directions of the mujtahid, the ruler, of the jurist. And on any matter, he could outrule any of those. He could intervene, and he could propose the president wants to do something else, although he's elected. If the supreme leader, if the mujtahid in charge, and the mujtahid was the head of the state, the mujtahid who is the wali, if he opposes that, doesn't matter. The entire nation, they vote, they say we want to go this way, and he doesn't consider that to be the proper way to go, he could make that illegal. So he has a great authority, unlimited authority, and this is called al-wilaya al-mutlaq. This is called Velayat-e-Faqih mutlaq. This is called the unlimited guardianship of the jurist. Now, so you understood what does the concept mean. Of course, when we are saying boundless, unlimited, it doesn't mean it's bound by a certain geography, by a certain country. No, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam's authority extends beyond the boundaries of Arabia, right? It's not limited to the geography of the Arabian Peninsula. The Imam alayhi salatu wasalam has authority over our lives. If you're living in the West or if you're living in Asia, it doesn't matter where you live. Likewise, the jurist, you as a Shia, you as a Muslim. If you live, doesn't matter. You live in Morocco, you live in the United States, you live in Iran, you live it doesn't matter where you live. You are bound to an authority that is the same authority as the Holy Imam. If he wants you to divorce your wife, you live in the UK, if the mujtahid wants you to divorce, he could. All he has to do is say the word. Your wife is divorced. That's it. You are no longer married to that woman. And if he wants to sell your property, he could command you to sell your property. Perhaps you will not agree then, but it'll be a sin. But if you're a devout Shia, you'll have to agree and sell your property. If you are a person, a Shia living, let's say, in France or living in the United States or the UK or Canada or anywhere, the mujtahid, the wali-faqih, although you do not follow him, you're not his muqallid, yet because he's the wali-faqih, because he is the supreme leader, because he is the jurist guardian, if he wishes anything for you to carry out, you have to obey, you have to comply, because he has the same authority as the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when we say boundless, unlimited, it also means boundless, unlimited by time and geography. So that is not only specific for Iran or anywhere else. So he enjoys quite a grand position. Now that is what I thought. So you understood. One of the aspects of this authority is to be the head of all the states, not just the state of Iran. Any government in the world, whether it's the government of Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Egypt, United States, the UK, Russia, they are all illegitimate as long as they are not headed by and they are not certified by the supreme leader, by the jurist guardian. All governments, they are taghut, they are governments of Satan, they are governments of the devil, unless they are ruled by this person who has the same authority as the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, according to this theory. So, and this is Velayat-e-Faqih al-Mutlaq. This is what it means. So now we turn to the proofs. It's important. We are submissive to Islam. We are submissive to the path of Ahlul Bayt. Of course, if Allah gives this authority, if the creator of the heavens and the earth, he gives this authority to one person, whether it be a Shia jurist or some other person, right? That you, all mankind, obey him. All mankind. Then we have to obey. Obey. But we have to verify. That's the important point. We have to verify and authenticate and investigate whether truly Allah has indeed given such instructions that you, mankind, have to obey the jurist. And he has this authority to control your lives, to be the absolute dictator of the whole world. We have to verify that. Now, so Velayat-e-Faqih's term has been explained to you. Velayat-e-Faqih, what does it mean by theory? It has explained and explained. Now we turn to proofs. Before I turn to proofs, one more point. So there are two kinds of Velayat-e-Faqih, right? Two theories, limited and unlimited. The limited one clearly states that Faqih does not have that authority, same authority as the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Clearly states that the mujtahid, the jurist, does not have that unlimited authority to be the head of the state and to be only legitimate head of states of all countries in the world and every person in the world. Not only Shia, all persons in the world have to obey him. He doesn't have that authority. No, only in limited matters. If there's a crazy person, nobody's taking care of him. So mujtahid is the best person qualified to, because he knows halal and haram, because he knows the ruling of Islam. He's the least person to abuse that crazy person's rights. So we appoint him. He's been appointed to be the caretaker of that crazy person, or an orphan, or a masjid that's in ruins, right? Or if there is some religious endowment, so there's a garden, right? Or there's an orchard, or there's a factory that's a religious endowment. Its income should be spent in the path of Allah. So now nobody's taking care of that factory. Nobody's taking care of that orchard, that agricultural land. It's going into ruins. So who's the best person to take care of that religious endowment? So that is very limited authority, as opposed to the unlimited authority. Now, this theory of Velayat-e-Faqih as opposed to Khilafah. Khilafah is the theory of Imamah, theory of succession of the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam amongst the other denomination of Muslims, amongst the Umaris, right? Their political parties in the Islamic world, they are talking about Islamic government. Usually they're talking about Khilafah, a system of government similar to Khilafah or Khilafah itself. So Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, he was the Khalifa. Mullah Umar, in the Taliban's rule, he was the Khalifa. And the last Khalifa who died, who abdicated actually, was after World War I in Turkey. After that, they didn't have any Khalifa until Mullah Umar, and then Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. Now they are both dead, so they do not have Khalifa. So that is their version of Khilafah. But we are not talking about that now. We are talking about the Shia version. Shia political parties and Shia political movements, religious, that are based on religion. Not secular Shia political parties. There are many Shia political parties in the Islamic world, Shia politicians who are secular, who are not religious, who do not practice politics based on religion, right? There in Pakistan, there are many politicians who are secular, who want to participate in elections, who want to run the government, but not under the guise of religion. So we're not talking about those Shia, but we are talking about religious Shia who are motivated by religious fervor to enter the political arena. They are usually devoted to the theory of Velayat, theory of guardianship of the jurist. And this theory of guardianship of the jurist was more successful in the recent eras and the recent decades than the theory of Khilafah. Theory of Khilafah has failed in the modern Islamic world. Maybe in the future they would establish a Khilafah, we don't know, but currently Khilafah has been abolished and there's no Khalifa, and many attempts have been made to revive Khilafah and they have all failed miserably, as opposed to the theory of Velayat-e-Faqih, which has been successful. Khomeini led a revolution which was able to, the first grassroots a movement that was in big part, not totally, driven by religious fervor and religious identity, and its leader was a religious figure, Khomeini himself. He was able to topple a very powerful dynasty in Iran, the late Muhammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, and then establish a government, a theocracy based on this theory. And that, despite many opposition to that and wars, that government has continued to live and survive for decades. So, Velayat-e-Faqih has been most successful. But we do not measure. We do not measure whether something is religiously sanctioned and religiously canonized on the basis of success. How do we know if something is truly in conformity to Islam? How do we know? How do we realize whether something, Wilayat al-Faqih or any other theory, is Islamic or not? There's only one way. We have to see whether it corresponds to Islam. What is Islam? Islam is Quran and the teachings of the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and the holy Imams. So, in other words, now it's time to investigate the validity of the theory of Wilayat al-Faqih, whether it's a sound Islamic Shi'a tenet, whether it's indeed part of the doctrines that Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salatu was-salam have enjoined their Shi'a and taught their Shi'a, or whether this is a heresy, this is a blasphemy, this is an innovation, this is something that was made up, either intentionally or unintentionally, and entered into our religious dogma. So we have to investigate. And how do we do that? We have to see the proofs. We have to see the proofs, the arguments that have been made, whether Allah says so, that the jurist has this authority over people's lives, whether Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wasalam have given such instructions. We have to verify that. So now we enter the next phase of our discussion in Wilayat al-Faqih. And that discussion is the discussion of the proofs of Wilayat al-Faqih, whether there is enough sufficient proofs, whether there is adequate evidence to substantiate the theory of Wilayat al-Faqih, that it indeed it emanates from the sayings of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam or the verse of the Noble Quran. Now, before I enter the proofs, one point. For those of you who are familiar with my teachings, with my lectures, you know that I reject ijtihad from its roots. So I do not. So when we are talking about the guardianship of the jurist, we are talking about who? Jurist means mujtahid, right? So the ijtihadi method, I stand opposed to ijtihadi method, and I outrightly reject ijtihad and refute ijtihad. And I do not agree with ijtihad. And I do not believe, it's not just my belief, it's just based on sound proofs that I have presented in my various lectures. And I've withstood the test of debates and criticisms. And those who oppose me, they have not been able to refute my proofs. They only attack my personality, which perhaps their criticisms are okay. I do not claim I'm the best person in the world, and I do not have shortcomings, perhaps. Yes, indeed, my shortcomings are immense. But my proofs with regard to the method of ijtihad are valid. My criticisms and refutations with regard to the method of ijtihad is valid. But I'm not going to mention that now. So if you take into account my previous lectures, which I have not presented in English, but in Farsi and Arabic, my rejections and my refutations on the topic of ijtihad into consideration, then you would know that Mujtahid himself being a person, the whole methodology of ijtihad being an innovation, being a deviation from the path of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salatu wasalam, such a person cannot be the heir of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the successor of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the deputy of the Nabi and the holy Imams alayhim salam. So then it will be very easy for you. But we are not there yet, because if I start discussing ijtihad, then Velayat al-Faqih would be delayed for another time. So I leave those discussions for another time. Discussions of the criticism of ijtihad in the madhab of Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salam, we going to postpone that for another time. Now we are going to just discuss Velayat al-Faqih, the guardianship of the jurist, without analyzing whether the position of jurisprudence himself, whether it's an innovation or not. So we are not going to discuss that. Now, let's talk about Velayat al-Faqih. So if you ask the proponents of Velayat al-Faqih, those who advance the theory of Velayat al-Faqih and defend it tooth and nail, they would tell you, oh, we have so many proofs. We have intellectual proofs, rational proofs, that intelligence, rationality, but just by mere consideration of the facts would testify that indeed the mujtahid, the clerical hierarchy, has this authority to be the ruler of the whole world. Indeed. So they would boast that they have rational proofs. And then they say, we have proofs from Quran, many, many verses from Quran, proof that. And many, many hadith from Ahl al-Bayt. And perhaps they will also claim consensus, but that's very questionable, because there are many Shi'a and also non-Shi'a scholars who do not believe in Velayat al-Faqih. So consensus, you would not hear. But these other three proofs, aql, reason, Quran, and hadith, you commonly hear. So now we are going to discuss their proofs. And I'm going to start with their most important proofs. And then we'll go to their proofs that are less important. So, and we'll start their more important proofs rest in the area of hadith. And we are going to mention those hadith, and we will analyze whether these hadith indeed lead us to this conclusion that Faqih has this authority or not, the Mujtahid has this authority. But before, one more point that you have to remember before I start studying the proofs is that please do not forget the definition of Velayat. I presented to you two different distinct meanings of Velayat: unlimited and limited. Now keep that in mind. Keep that in mind, because these proofs have to be judged against those theories, those concepts, right? A proof should always, right? A proof should always lead us to that conclusion. Otherwise, that argument is faulty. That argument is inconclusive. An argument is only acceptable when it leads to the conclusion that is claimed that it leads to. So please remember that conclusion, the theory of Velayat al-Faqih, when we are discussing the proofs. And always, when I'm presenting the proofs, at the end of the proofs articulation, ask yourself whether indeed this proof, this hadith or verse of Quran, or rational explanation, whether indeed it leads to that idea, it justifies that concept. Now let's start the first proof. The first proof, perhaps if you go to their books, they'll have different order, but it doesn't matter. We'll discuss all their proofs. The first proof that they will present to you from a hadith is the maqbula of Umar ibn Hanbal. The maqbula of Umar ibn Hanbal. And I read to you maqbula of Umar ibn Hanbal just in my previous lecture on the topic of the inconsistency amongst hadith. One portion of that hadith, that's a lengthy hadith, one portion of this hadith is used by proponents of Velayat al-Faqih as a proof of Velayat al-Faqih. Because the Imam alayhi salatu wasalam says, فَإِنِّي قَدْ جَعَلْتُهُ عَلَيْكُمْ حَاكِمًا. Now let me show you Maqula of Umar ibn Hanbala. I'll show you its English translation, and I will show to you how proponents of Velayat-e-Faqih, such as Khomeini, and Velayat-e-Faqih's ideologues, such as Sheikh Hussein Ali Muntadhir, these chief ideologues of Velayat-e-Faqih, because Khomeini himself was not, although he was the first person to establish a government on the basis of this theory. However, he was not his chief ideologue. This theory had been established before him, unfortunately. Well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, because then I'll be biased, right? In my presentation. But I'm already biased, you know my position. Before him, but not very long before him, just a few generations before him. And then one of Khomeini's very smart, genius students by the name of Sheikh Hussein Ali Muntadhir, who was his deputy and who was at one time appointed to be the heir of Khomeini. He was a very skillful jurist, and for the first time, he delivered many lectures, very, very well-researched lectures, and those lectures were compiled in a form of voluminous book, 4 volumes, by the name of the Islamic government in Velayat. And although later on Sheikh Hussein Ali Muntadhiri was persecuted by the Iranian government, however, his lectures still remain the main ideological backbone of the theory of Velayat, the most important work to have been, in a scholarly manner, to have been written and delivered in the support of Velayat-e-Faqih, of those lectures. مقبولة of Umar ibn Hanbal. الأصول من الكافي, volume number 1, published by دار الكتب الإسلامية. Okay. Volume number 1, here we go. Page number 67, the book of knowledge, and the chapter on the difference between ahadith and ahadith. Hadith number 10. Now, I'm not going to take your time because it's a lengthy hadith. And if you want to understand this hadith, please refer to my previous lecture on the subject of inconsistency between hadith. I read this hadith. So you can go there and listen to the various phrases of this hadith, what they mean. So I'm not going to present this hadith in its totality, in its entirety to you once again, because it will take a long time, translation and explanation and interpretation. However, I'll tell you what this hadith is talking about. This hadith is, Umar ibn Hanbala says to Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, if there's a dispute between 2 Shi'a, what should they do? The Imam alayhi salam says they should not go to the governors or the caliph or the judges that are appointed by the caliph and their governors. Who should, because they're not allowed to go to. And who should they go to? Who should they go to? Who should they refer to? The Holy Imam alayhi salam responds that in such a case, when 2 Shia are disputing amongst themselves, they should look for a person who is a narrator of our hadith, and he knows our halal and haram, and he knows our rulings, how we Shia educate different disputes. A person who knows our decisions and disputes, a person who knows our rulings, a person who is the narrator of our hadith, we should refer to him. I appoint him as an فَلْيَرْضَوْا بِهِ حَكَمًا. Both parties should concede to his position as an arbitrator. Please pay attention here. This is important. We are getting close to that very critical phrase that is used by Khomeini and his likes to justify Velayat-e-Faqih. فَلْيَرْضَوْا بِهِ حَكَمًا. Both parties, both disputing parties should concede, should agree to him being an arbitrator. Hakam means arbitrator. Then this phrase, this إِنِّي قَدْ جَعَلْتُهُ عَلَيْكُمْ حَاكِمًا. This is very important. This is used by Khomeini and those who follow Khomeini in order to justify Velayat-e-Faqih. What does this sentence mean? This could be translated in two different ways, and there are two distinct different translations. One translation that's conducive to the position of Khomeini, hakim. The word hakim in Arabic, let's have a look. This word hakim. Hakim. What does this mean? This the whole dispute rests on the semantics of this word hakim. What does this word? According to Khomeini, hakim means ruler, ruler. Person who rules, governs. He's a ruler. So, فإني قد جعلته عليكم حاكما. Both parties should agree and concede to him as an arbitrator, because indeed I am appointing him, because indeed I have appointed him as a ruler over you, a ruler over you. So, now how does Khomeini and his followers and his supporters prove Velayat-e-Faqih from this? If we translate the word hakim as ruler, then the meaning becomes very easy, right? The substantiation of Velayat-e-Faqih becomes easier. How? We say that Imam alayhi salam said that you should look for a person who narrates our hadith, and he knows our rulings, and he knows our decisions and disputes. And you should agree for him to be an arbitrator. So this person who is narrating hadith, knows halal and haram, that's the mujtahid. That's number one. You have to agree to that. So they presuppose that, and nobody has really seriously challenged them so far, that this means mujtahid. This means the jurist. And you know my position. I do not consider narrators to be mujtahideen. So, but let's assume, let's suppose that this means the mujtahid. So you look for a mujtahid, and you agree to him as a narrator, because as an arbitrator. Arbitrator is a person who resolves disputes between two people by their mutual agreement. So both parties should agree that he should be the arbitrator. Because indeed, verily, I have appointed him as a ruler over you. Now, Mujtahid has been appointed as a ruler by the Holy Imam. So we all know the Caliph at the time of the Imam alayhi salam, he did not have legitimacy to rule. He was a despot. He was a taghut. He was the devil, and his government was an evil government. All these the governors were criminals, and their entire establishment, their entire administrations were criminals. They were all evil people, so they didn't have any religious authority or religious legitimacy to rule over Muslims. Now Imam alayhi salam has appointed a mujtahid as a ruler. So, and this ruling, this appointment of the Imam alayhi salam has not been abrogated. It's not been cancelled. It's in full force today. So the Imam alayhi salatu wasalam, since he has appointed the mujtahid as a ruler, then the question of who should be the ruler of the Muslim state, the Muslim society, has been settled. That by the Holy Imam alayhi salam, unless you oppose the Imam alayhi salam, and that's kufr. Therefore, mujtahid has the authority to rule over Muslims. Now, what is the extent of his rule? Does he have the same authority as the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam or not? Then those discussions are secondary. But first, this hadith proves that he has the authority to rule. So that, I think, I've pretty clearly explained to you how Khomeini and his followers would articulate this hadith. And that's how they articulate this hadith. That's how they substantiate Velayat-e-Faqih on the basis of this hadith. And then the Imam alayhi salam says, فَإِذَا حَكَمَ بِحُكْمِنَا, this person, this mujtahid, when he, now I am translating in a manner that's conducive to the position of Khomeini. That may not be necessarily the true translation, and I may not agree with it, but you have to bear with it. Now, this person, this mujtahid, إِذَا حَكَمَ بِحُكْمِنَا, if he indeed gives a ruling that's according to us, or he rules, he governs over you according to our rule, and you oppose him. فلم يقبله منه. Person doesn't agree to that. In such a case, فإنما استخف بحكم الله. This person has insulted the rule of Allah, the rule of and insult. Well, علينا رد, and not only he has insulted the rule of Allah, such a person has rejected us, rejected. And a person who rejects us, الرد علينا الرد على الله, and a person who rejects on our face, he rejects on God's face, on Allah's face. He rejects Allah. وهو على حد الشرك بالله, and this is indeed equivalent, synonymous with shirk. It's tantamount to shirk. One more time, pay attention. When this person rules according to our principle, and you do not agree to that, you have insulted the rule of Allah. You have rejected us. And a person who rejects us, he has rejected Allah. And rejection of Allah is synonymous with polytheism, with shirk. Understood? So, Velayat-e-Faqih is proof, and the emphasis of the Holy Imam, how powerful and how important, how critical it is to submit to the rule of Faqih is clear for this translation and interpretation of this hadith. Now, shall we proceed? Is this the correct translation? Is this really what Imam alayhi salam said? All this is an egregious distortion of what the Imam alayhi salam said. Please allow me to present that argument for tomorrow, or that argument tomorrow, inshallah. Let me go to your phone calls, because I don't want to bore you with lengthy lectures, because you are susceptible to boredom, aren't you? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa. If you want to call me, I'm here to answer to your phone calls. I'll take your calls. If you have any kind of criticism, rejection about what I presented to you, I'm here to hear you. May Allah bless you all. Let's see what you got to say, okay? So if you want to make a call, the number. Oh, I did not display the number here, huh? The number is not here. Or the link. Is it true? Oh, my apologies. I thought I had placed it there. Oh, God. Okay. My apologies. I'm going to put in the comment section as YouTube, as well as Facebook, how you can follow me, okay? Just give me one moment. Okay. There's a link you can follow. Okay, here we go. There's a link you can use, or there are phone numbers. So if you want to call, I'm here for a few more minutes. My apology that I did not put in the description of the videos how to call. So the numbers are there in the comment sections now. If you want to call. الله على يزيد. Okay. Seems like I do not have the pleasure of receiving your calls today. So I pray for your health, and then I'm going to see you tomorrow or after tomorrow, right? My next lecture is Muhammad وعجل فرجهم الشريف. May Allah bless you. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. May Allah bless you all. May Allah keep you well. Until next time, Allah bless you.
فيه النعمة من ربنا آيايا والدين بفضل الكرار اكتمل فاسأل عنه الليل وسوح الوغايا أفهل كان مثل علي بطال ولقيادي عند الجهاد علي ولقيادي عند الجهاد علي علي مولاي